Oh, it went away. And so the first thing I want to show you is just an overall macro view. And when I say an overall view, first things we want to do is like take a world view and put us into context, us being the United States of America. So the first thing that we want to show you is that the United States has more incarcerated people than any other country in the world. Now, the United States is 4.1% of the world population. The largest country in the world, or the heaviest populated country in the world, is China. China has close to 20% of the population, 17 point something. And yet the United States still surpasses China in terms of the number of incarcerated people it holds. And notice it's the United States, China, and then everyone else is much lower. So the first thing we should ask ourselves is, why is there so many incarcerated people in the United States? Let me show you something else. This right here, this depicts the growth of the population. Now, you didn't have a chance to read Michelle Alexander's book, but one of the things she discusses is the fact that the population of incarcerated exploded during President Reagan's, well, from President Reagan's term and thereon. Excuse me. It's because of policies that were developed during President Reagan's term. And when you hear the term hard on crime, that's really, or the war on drugs, that's really what prompted the growth in the percentage of people that ended up behind bars. So in Michelle Alexander's book, and this is it right here, I showed it many to you when we were talking to your class. Well, the name of the book is The New Jim Crow. And one of the things that a member of our team brought out is that this is the new Jim Crow, but many people may not really know what is meant by the old Jim Crow. If you feel like you know, can you just give us a brief explanation? Anybody want to take a shot at it?
I'll give it a try. So you said the old Jim Crow?
Yeah, the
To me, the
original.
old Jim Crow was in your face, like whites on that side, blacks on that side, bow, like face forward, like we letting you know. To me, the new Jim Crow is like subliminal. It's kind of like more behind the scenes. What's that called? Covert, overt versus covert. That's kind of like my quick explanation.
And that's good enough. So back in the day, and really slavery was just, that was enslavement. So whatever you were told to do, you had to do by your master. After enslavement came Reconstruction, and that's when people couldn't tell you what to do because you were a slave. They could tell you what to do because the norms and the informal laws that were there enabled them to do that. Sharecropping, for example. And as Andra just said, that was Andra. Now it's not that people can tell you what to do because they own you, but when you're in the correctional system, it almost amounts to the same thing. So I'm going to read you something that Michelle Alexander wrote. Notice we have probation here, prison here, and parole here. And the numbers have grown from 1980 astronomically into the year 2013. She says, with respect to parole in 1980, only 1% of all prison admissions were parole violators. 20 years later, more than 1/3, 35% of prison admissions resulted from parole violations. To put the matter more starkly, about as many people were returned to prison for parole violations in 2000 as were admitted to prison in 1980 for all reasons. And then she says later on, this disturbing phenomenon of people cycling in and out of prison, trapped by their second-class status, has been described by Lois Waquant as a closed circuit of perpetual marginality. So let me just put on the table right quick. Why do you think the United States has has invested so much in having a police system?
Money, power, and control. And I think the
Money.
original security and police was created for the rich folks. You know, the landlords, people who had the power, they want to keep it. You know, they don't want a rebellion to rise up against. I think that was like the point of origin. The way I understand it.
So is there someone who can break down what he said? You said money, power, and
Control.
control. So how does putting people in prison, if you're already making a lot of money, if you've already got most of the wealth in the country, how does putting people who are marginalized in prison more helping you get more money? Can someone address that?
I don't want to be the only person talking, but
Right.
I think about prisons as like a new modern form of like slavery in some ways, because I think when you get in that system, they make money off of those bodies, right? Being in themselves. Sometimes they actually literally do work, whatever, 15 cents an hour, you know, kind of stuff. So that to me is like a new version of slavery that's legalized. Well, I guess it was kind of legal back then, even though unethically, you know, ethically wrong, but legal, again, just a new form of it. And so if I can get you in the system and we profit from it, that's the money, right? The power, the control, right? Control the people. So that to me touches on all those. But I'm gonna be quiet because I feel like I'm talking.
Don't worry, I'm gonna call on folk. But he made an excellent point. So the point may not be so much about control. The point might be more about money and profit, because that's why slaves were bought over. That's why Africans were brought over here in the first place and turned into a slave system, because the biggest cost that you have in any business is labor. And now they got free labor almost all over again. I think, Brock, you were going to say something. Were you?
Yeah, I was just gonna add to what he was saying about how putting marginalized groups of people inside the prison system helps them get more profit, since the fact that they don't have to put as much money into those communities as they would have to for, like, quote unquote, the government standard support that they would have to add in, and so they're not losing out on that profit that they will have to put into those communities. And then putting those people in prison will kind of also show to the others that, like, if you have these, like, certain, like, quote unquote, three strikes that they call it, it's like where you marginalized, or if you look like a certain way or something, then you're automatically supposed to be, like, counted as a criminal. And so I was just gonna add that part, that
Yeah.
on what he was saying, that it cuts back on profits that they would normally expend to keep, like, the government's quota, or like help, or like social services that they would provide to those people. But since they're in jail, they wouldn't get any of those benefits.
That was a comprehensive answer. Very good. You built on what he said. Thank you. Any other opinions on this? Okay, I got more for you. Don't worry. So oh, darn it, I put that down. Let me bring up the second part, because one of the things we asked you to read or to view was this 6-minute video on, it was, what was it? It was on the punishment, right? It was on the guards and the
Like the mock prison situation.
one that they created, the experiment they created, and they took 24 Stanford students. Well, prior to that, and what that experiment came out of was experiments that were done after World War II, because Hitler had taken over. And they wanted to understand, how did Hitler affect all these minds? Just like today, many people are wondering about our ex-president and the fact that he has this coterie of people that are totally, totally into him no matter what he does. So I want to show you this video. I'm only going to show you a couple of minutes of it. Oh, I didn't share my screen, did I?
A decade earlier, psychologist Stanley Milgram had also looked at how we respond to authority. In order to understand how people were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities such as the Holocaust, he set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory.
Could you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Where? Teacher.
Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Cloud. Forest, rock, house. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer, forest.
Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right ahead.
I refuse to go in. Let me out.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're gonna get a shot. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Stand down. I'm not gonna kill that man, man. I mean, who's gonna take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next was slow. Walk, dance, truck, music. And
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
375 volts. I think something's happened to that fellow now. I don't get no answer. He was hollering on less voltage. Can't you check in and see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's findings horrified America. They showed that decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts against their conscience.
Okay. Let me stop sharing there. Just to make sure you understand, that was an experiment that was done before the experiment with the guards. And the guy that you saw, he was just, they were the test subjects. And over 50% of these people that they got off the street were willing to administer shocks that would kill the other person on the other side who was an actor. Over 50%. That would mean half of the folks that are on this call right now. And those people suffered. They got anxiety attacks, nightmares after this was over, and yet they still followed and did what this guy said. So can you relate? Can you explain why ordinary people might do something like that and how that relates to what we're talking about? Give it a shot, Mr. Brown.
I believe that ordinary people would give in to the directives from authority simply because of societal conditioning and the feeling that you don't want to do something wrong. You know, everyone wants to, not to say everyone wants to follow instructions, but a lot of everyday people will act out of a way to not displease others, you know, to keep conformity, to just blend in with society. And if they feel like other participants of the survey would follow the instructions, or since they consented to be in the study, you know, they're like, well, this is what I have to do because this is what I'm here for. This is a study that I'm put into it. Then I guess I have to keep increasing the shock, you know. Displeasure from authority makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and especially in the masses, they don't really want to give into that or go against that displeasure, so they'll kill the person or follow instructions.
That was a really good answer. It seems like there's 3 entities involved, though, when you said they don't want to hurt. They didn't want to hurt the guy that was giving them directions. They didn't want to conflict with him, but they knew they were hurting the guy on the other side. Didn't want to hurt him. And then they ended up getting hurt because they went home with feelings of anxiety. So despite hurting all 3 people who are involved, it's like a loss, loss, loss. He still went ahead and did it. So, Mr. Cooper, can you relate this to what we're talking about in terms of the criminal justice system? I know it takes some thinking. I mean it. Somebody can come in and help them if they'd like. Mhm. Okay, thank you. Mr. Broussard.
Mrs. Rice.
Yes.
So I actually don't have an answer right now, but can I just receive a quick summary of the criminal justice part you're talking about, just so I can answer like the next questions?
Sure. I'm sorry. Maybe I missed what you said. Say it again.
I said I don't have an answer for this question, but I did come in a little bit late. I was wondering if I can have a summary of the criminal justice part that the general conversation's about, just so I can answer the next questions.
Oh, sorry, I did misunderstand you. Sure. What we're talking about, we had readings, and those readings pertain to the criminal justice system. And what we're trying to do now is to understand the overall picture and then bring in different facets of that picture to explain our criminal justice system today. So the first thing we looked at was that the United States has all these people that are incarcerated. And as one person pointed out, one good reason for that is so that they can get free labor. Free labor means your costs are cut tremendously. Now we're looking at the authority part, because if you tell a whole group of people what to do, you had one slave master on a plantation, and you got all these slaves, and these slaves listen to what that one slave master is telling them to do. So what type of maybe psychological understanding is going on that makes all of these people behave in the way that we'll call a master for right now, wanted him or her to behave? That's what this question pertains to. Let me let that lie for a moment, and let's go on to the next thing. I had asked you all, we'll pull it all together. One of the readings had to do with the Barred Prison Initiative. And that was where this group of people who were in prison up in New York, together with Bard College, formed a debate team. And that debate team went up against a top-notch debate team. So let me bring that up, share the screen.
You can't prepare for everything that your opponent is going to come up with, but you do the best that you can to refute it, to attack their arguments, and to prove that you're right. And I guess that's something that I think a lot of us on the team like to do, to say you're wrong, we're right, and here's why.
Today's topic will be resolved. The United States federal government should nationalize the pharmaceutical industry. Bard will affirm this statement and West Point will negate. At the end, the panel of judges will determine a winner, either by consensus or call a vote. So with that, I wish them all good luck and thank you for being here.
I just want to say that, nothing that I or any of my partners say is reflective of the views of the United States Military Academy, the Department of Defense, the Army, or the government as a whole.
The first speaker should come up and present this coherent, really clear case that outlines the problem.
We propose that the U.S. federal government nationalize the pharmaceutical industry. We're proposing a paradigm shift. Profits before people, life-saving over money-making. Many life-saving drugs in the market today are unaffordable for most people. The pharma industry is not interested in public health.
So Keegan just gave a very good speech about the evils of the pharmaceutical industry. But what I think he forgot to do is to discuss the history of this industry. In the year 1900, there were 3 primary killers in the United States and the world: tuberculosis, diarrhea, and pneumonia. Today, lethal instances of these diseases have almost been eradicated due to the United States pharmaceutical industry.
Then as we move down the bench, each speaker should be refuting whatever West Point has said so far.
I would like to refute their characterization of the history of the pharmaceutical industry. The government is already spending more money on research and development right now than the pharmaceutical industry is spending. According to the St. Louis University School of Law, the NIH already supports the pharmaceutical industry by spending $30 billion a year.
I'm going to stop it there. I'm stopping it there because I wanted you to see that it was real, that each side gave the other side respect, that each side prepared, and that the preparation was top-notch. So here's a simple way for me to ask you about this question.
725.
Thank you very much. If a prison here in Atlanta, not that one that you just saw in the video, but any prison here in Atlanta were to form a debate team, let's say, and they were to come up against any college here in Atlanta, including, let's say, Morehouse debate team, and they had a topic that was as sufficiently developed as that, who do you think would win? The prison team or the school university team? And why? Kobe.
Because I'm biased, I'll say Morehouse, but I will say that that's not to knock the intelligence of like the people who are in prison. And I definitely do feel like it depends on the topic as well. So if it's something that like affects more younger people, I feel like Morehouse students would like win the debate. But as far as just like political and stuff like that, I feel like people in prison will have the advantage over that because typically they're a little bit older with more experience and stuff.
And the reason I missed why you said Morehouse would win?
Because I'm biased.
Just strictly because you're biased? No facts, no evidence, no nothing?
Oh, also because I feel like I said, it depends on the topic that we have. If it's about something like,
Are Morehouse men that great?
yeah, of course. But I ask me something that like, you know, younger people are more tuned into because as far as politics and stuff like that, I will say that I feel like people in prison not pay more attention to stuff like that, but I feel like they hear a lot more stuff like that, so they have more time to like think about stuff like that rather than students who. And then also, are we specifically talking about the debate team of Morehouse or just random Morehouse students?
Okay, thank you. Was it Jaden or Eddie that had their hand raised? Jaden, right?
I really just wanted to expand on what he was saying. He said it depended on the topic. I think that in terms of something with more experience, the prisoners will win because they have more life experience than we do. But as he said, yeah, he really kind of wrapped my point up, if I'm being honest. So I had put my hand down, but yeah, good job, Will said that.
I'll accept that y'all get time to prepare when you do a debate. And so what I'm really asking in this question is, do you think that the intelligence level varies? And if it's not the intelligence level that you think varies, then is it preparation? Or why is it, do you think that that prison team were able to be some of the best teams, university teams in the United States?
I'd say is instead of like preparation and intelligence level, I'd give it to exposure to information because college students have exposure to certain information that prison people would not. But the prison people also have exposure to their experiences as to why they're in jail, how they're in jail, and also the experiences that they get through news that the jail tells them. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that jails have some type of resource where the people that are incarcerated can go like read books or something. I'm not sure if that's every prison, but I say so. It's just all about exposure to information. So, however, the prison team would get their exposure to information, whether they were allowed to like research themselves or like where they were just given like a set based off the topic of like research materials that they were allowed to go through, would be how they would be able to climb up the ranks instead of like it being based off their intelligence level.
Okay, very good. I liked your answer. You did bring up something I want to address, but I want to talk about something else first. So, Kobe, when you talked about, of course, the Morehouse man would win, I wasn't sure if you really kind of were addressing the intelligence factor.
I can piggyback off what I said to make it a little more clear. To piggyback off what he said, I also feel like if we're both given the same amount of resources as college students, like our one of our biggest jobs is like research and like knowing where to find stuff and everything. And I feel like if you give the same resources to people who are in prison, not saying that like they don't have like the same skills as us, I feel like that's all we do in college is research topics. So given like the same amount of resources, I feel like for any given topic, I think a college student in general should know how to research something better than almost anyone because all we do.
You know, that was a really good answer. You really explained that extremely well. I'm not going to address that for a moment because we need to move on, but we're going to try to come back to that in the next set of questions. What I do want to say is that the name of our project is Brilliance Behind Bars. And that's because as that prison team showed, there was brilliance behind the bars, so much so that they could compete with anybody in the United States and potentially beat them. So if you recall, we've got the largest number of incarcerated people in the entire world. In that incarcerated number, despite Black people being only 13.4% of the population, we're 32% of the prison population in the United States. That means a whole lot of Black men are behind bars. Then we talked about authority, and we showed how people who are in authority exercise and exploit their leadership over people who are marginalized. And now we come to showing that even despite all of that, there are people behind bars who still have that brilliance, who still have that intelligence level, who are now behind bars. And many of them who got out of prison ended up back in prison because of parole. So if we look and take all that into context, perhaps we can see a system that is designed to control a large group of, I'm not going to just say marginalized, but Black people. Now, again, I'm not trying to make your minds think this way, but I am trying to deduce information. That information leads my mind to think that way, but it may not lead your mind to think that way. And I'm interested in hearing what you all may think, if it's different or even if it's the same. But I want you to hold on to that thought because we want to take a poll first. We figure this is going to be when most people are on. So Shenard, if you can bring up the poll, because we need to know who your teachers are, what classes you're coming from, because we need to report to the professors which of their classes, which of their students have attended. So Shenard, if you can bring up that poll, we want to just take a few minutes for you to fill that out, and then we'll get back to this.
It's up now. Can you all see it?
I can't see it. I'll see if I can bring it up. Can you all see it now?
No, I only saw it when I first entered the meeting and I answered it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
we
When
needed
I
to
answered it.
relaunch it again.
Are you still sharing the screen?
Oh, yes, that's the problem. Sorry. Am I still sharing?
No.
No.
Then that's not the problem. Let us know if you can see it. If not, then we'll do this another way.
Nothing on the side.
You said you do see it?
I
I
can't
do
see
not.
it. Yeah, I can't see
No.
it.
Shenard, we'll do this another way. We won't try and show the poll. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. But let's take the time to do this. Can you do us a favor and put in the chat your name and your teacher's name? If you came from an AAE class, African American experience, can you just put your teacher's name and the time of your class so we can, because some teachers are teaching more than one class. Just put it in the chat. Thank you. Appreciate you helping us out here.
There's the poll.
It just popped up.
Oh, it's about the.
It just did.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can answer that, that's actually easier for us because we put it in a spreadsheet format. Thank you.
Okay. I just answered it.
Thank you. Thank you. We can see here how many people are responding. There's a second question there also while you're answering that. And that second question is, if you want to ask a question of the alumni, because there may be some people who really don't want to, they want to be a part of it, but they don't necessarily want to ask a question. So if you think you do, or if you're not sure, you're undecided, please indicate so. And of course, if you don't.
Interviewing. It's not.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
So it's not asking a question, gentlemen. It's an interview process. You'll be engaging them in substantive ways, coached by Dr. Rice.
Okay, we're at 9 of 12. Is there anyone else here who, I think we see everybody. So Mr. Shepherd, Kareem, Diop, and John Jackson.
Yes.
Pardon me? Go ahead, Kareem. You answered already?
What was your question?
There we go. Just to see if you had answered the poll.
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, let's go ahead and go past this. I'm going to close it out. Can you close it out? Okay. Okay, so what we had also put on the table when we were talking to y'all was a question. And this question can incorporate what we've already discussed or not. But the question is, should taxpayer funds pay for post-secondary education or college education for incarcerated people? So the taxes you pay, the taxes your parents pay, your relatives pay, should they pay for college education for people who are behind bars?
Yes.
Please explain.
I think like we're already paying for people to be in that whole system from the police officer down into the prison system, which does nothing to me to elevate society as a whole. I think education is one of those powerful tools which does that. And so that would be to me a wise investment from a high level or a macro view to like elevate society as a whole. I believe in recidivism as well, and so I think that's also a part of that process. And I also am familiar with the studies that said there's a direct correlation between like vocabulary education and people that are incarcerated. Thus, if you can bridge that gap, I think you can then diminish the possibility or the odds of somebody like maybe returning to a prison system and perpetuating that negative cycle.
Mr. Taylor, you're on it. Have you studied this stuff?
Oh yeah, I'm about that life. So yeah, it's on my whole pretty close to my heart. Yeah,
To
So
kind of piggyback.
he made an excellent point, and I'm going to ask Dr. Yancey to speak up after I say this. But you're right. Studies show this big, probably the most respected study that's been done shows that people who get college education behind bars, they're 43% less likely to recidivate. We didn't show you the film, but in all these different states, they've collected the data. And sometimes it goes down to 0% of people who go back to jail after they've had like a bachelor's degree or higher. So good point again, Mr. Taylor. Dr. Yancey, I know that you've had experience here. Can you share some?
Well, I think the scholars are doing an excellent job in answering your questions. I can just only piggyback off of what what has already been said. And one of the things, as the scholar just mentioned, is that that's probably why they don't want to give us education in these institutions, because it will decrease the chances of recidivism, which would decrease their funding or their profits. And critical and analytical skills, especially logical skills, logical thinking skills, is absolutely part of the educational process, whether they're in prison, on the street, or in college. Those skills by themselves are priceless. They're probably the three of the most important skills a person can have, just being a person. And so I think it has something to do, as the scholar said, to them not educating. One of the things we do know for a fact is that it used to be, in fact, my boss was part of the troubleshooting of getting out that got out the education that used to be in the prison system. They were able to get bachelors, masters, they were able to get trade, they were able to lift weights. He took out all of that, including weightlifting at one time. He claimed, named Luptra, Mark Luptra, you can look him up. He is quoted 1,000 times in D'Amico's Booth's book, which is called Why So Many Black Men Are in Prison. And he just says that plainly as day, is that he took those things out because he said it was making them smarter and he was making them stronger. And no policeman want to go up against someone that is much stronger than they are. In fact, that is what induced police officers to get into the weights and get stronger, because that's what produced police carrying the kind of weapons that they did. You all might remember a case out in California doing a bank robbery, and the guy had an AK-47, and the police in California felt that they were not empowered enough with enough equipment to combat the streets. And so I think the scholar is dead on.
Thank you, Dr. Yancey. That was information I didn't know. Jaden.
I more so had a question. Why not make it optional for people to fund college courses within the prison systems if people are serious about rehabilitation, reformation of individuals? Why not make it optional for us to use our tax dollars to fund these programs and these educational systems?
So it's my job here, in my mind, to play devil's advocate, to provoke you all to think a little more. So I used to be president of my homeowners association. And in that homeowners association, my car got broken into, but plenty of other people's cars, houses, whatever they had got broken into. One of my neighbors had a son who opened the door, and because of gang initiation, got half of his face shot off. What do you say to those people who have been victims of crimes about why their tax dollars should go pay for somebody in prison to have a college education?
That's why I said make it optional. Make it the people that really want to be for the rehabilitation and the rehab of others. Make it an option. Hey, you can sign this form and you'll know where your tax dollars are going, what you're paying for. Instead of just, hey, I'm gonna take this from you and then I'm gonna go use it to do this. Even if you're not okay with it, you know what I mean? Just make it an option. So the people that really want to put their money where their mouth is, they can do that. If they really want to be about that, then.
Mr. Broussard, can I ask Mr. Broussard a question? Is where does your tax money go to anyway? I'm asking.
Broussard.
You'll be surprised as to what we're funding with our tax dollars. We don't have an option.
Yeah, I know we don't have an option. That's really another issue within itself.
Gotcha.
But I mean, if we really want to be serious about rehabilitation and reformation, then that would be the easiest route to go. As you said, certain people have been victims of crimes. Certain people have been on the other side of things. So certain people wouldn't be comfortable with their tax dollars going towards that. So I'm just trying to, balance the two.
Okay, I will say that it might be logistically hard to make that separation unless you make it that a fee, you can make it an option for a person to pay an additional fee, but then to differentiate between those who want it and don't want it might be difficult. I think that's what Dr. Yancey was getting at. And so you may just have to make a decision to blanket it one way or the other. Either we support it or we don't. Any other comments?
Yeah, I wonder
Actually,
maybe it could be a question on your tax return, right? Like, when you file taxes, it's like, do you support this? And be like, I wonder if it's something that simple where like you opt in, opt out.
Yeah.
That
Would that
is an
make it? Was that
option.
too simple?
Not
I
that
don't
it's so
know.
simple, it's that I wonder how many people would respond positively to the question of, do you want your tax dollars to go towards funding education? Think about those people who are working a job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs to put their child in college. Even if they have sympathy towards those who are in college, might they be leery about taking some of their hard-earned money that they want for their child to go for somebody else?
I'm gonna push back, Ms. Rice. I think that at least like that minimum college level should be the same across the board, whether you in prison or out. I think we should vote in that. I think President Obama was talking about that, like at least like was it like the community college in the first 2 years? So I think at least a certain level should be across the board, and then that question should enter in on a higher level of learning or education.
So you're close actually to the real deal, because we have what's called the Pell Grant. Have any of you have heard the Pell Grant?
yeah.
Pell Grant is financially based. That is, if you can't really afford to go to college, it helps supplement your income. And that exists. And so for a long time, when they first started, people who were behind bars had access. Then with Clinton, they cut it off. And then with actually Obama, he started the trial, and now it's back in full effect so that people who are behind bars can take advantage of Pell Grants to help them pay for education. That is tax dollars. So in a sense, it's already happening. Any other thoughts about this?
I was gonna add that instead of like having them ask the question, you can put forth the idea to those that have gotten what it is, like bad motives, or like have gotten influenced badly by those that are incarcerated. You can make promote that giving those that are incarcerated more education allows it to happen less and far more less than it normally would, since they'll be able to be in that better like headspace of making a better judgment instead of trying to put themselves back where they just got out of.
I don't think I ever told you what our research question is, this BBB project. Maybe some of you heard it from our class, from our talking to your class. But our question has to do with, what is it about post-secondary education or college education that causes people, and in our case, we're doing just men, to transform? I bring that up because that's just what your response, Mr. Brock, was speaking to, was it not?
Yes.
So do you think that if your parents or other community members were to really believe that if they supported education for those behind bars, they would have a lot less crime? Do you think they would support it?
I wouldn't. Well, I think they're supported either way, but I wouldn't say a lot less crime would be the like determining factor. I was just more of saying like giving the incarcerated a chance to be able to get exposure to higher level education would be a would could possibly decrease the incarceration rate or like crime rate or like bad influences that would happen based on like prior events that happened to them, like petty crimes and such, like breaking into cars or like altercations where they escalate too far, or like better emotional intelligence when dealing with situations and things like that.
So Kareem, um, one of the other arguments that comes up is that you've got guards in prison who aren't making much money. You got staff in prison, and why shouldn't they be entitled first, maybe even before those who are behind bars, to take advantage of education in prisons. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It's an interesting question, but
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I just don't have an answer to it.
If you were a guard in a prison and the people that you are watching over were able to get an education, might you have an attitude towards them? Or towards the system for giving them an education and you can't afford to?
It depends, because as a guard, it depends if I want an education, if that makes sense. Because I feel like we're in the case if I want an education, I feel like I'll have an attitude, but not like, I don't know.
It's hard to answer because there's
It
feelings
is.
on both sides, right?
It is. That's what I'm saying. I keep on seeing like both sides. So I'm like, where do I stand?
Right. I get it. Mr. Brown.
Me personally, I'm not too sure where to go on the question, but a thought that I had of someone who would be against giving college educations to people behind bars is, why would we reward people our place in society? You know, a college education is something that is prized by a lot of people and seen as a higher place, you know, as like a star, basically a in your badge. I have education. This should give me more careers, right? This should give me, and at Morehouse College, you know, you get education here, you know, you get this, you get that, you're a leader. You know? The name of the college itself is its own you know, kind of gold star, as I said before, on basically any type of resume or anything. So why would we reward people who went against the conventions of society by breaking a rule, or were perceived to have broken a convention of society? Why would we give them more? Does that make sense? Like, why would we give them a gold star in society when they already broke it the first time?
Can I tap in?
Please.
So I don't think we're rewarding them or giving them incentive, nor do I think the education is equivalent to like a Morehouse level experience. Like me going to Morehouse and me getting an education in prison is not the same. You know, because the education is simple as like picking up a book, right? Reading and interpreting that information or knowledge. And going back to my point at the beginning, there's again that direct correlation between vocabulary, knowledge, education, and criminal activity or behavior. So I would dare to even stick my neck out to say maybe the reason why they're in the system is because of the lack of the education. And so I think sometimes if you look deeper into it, it might be stuff that's outside of their control, like maybe their parents or lack thereof, or you know, certain you know, people have been molested. I know of people, and there's like typically always like a crazy story that like you can trace back for a lot of instances where what causes people to kind of go off the rails. And so I think we're all in this level. I think some of us, I like to call it almost like we're fortunate, blessed, or lucky, that maybe our life didn't take that certain turn. You know, like we got the lottery pick, if you will. And so I don't think we should then punish the people who didn't win the lottery. I think it's our duty, obligation, and responsibility as leaders to then look back and pull up the people that have been left behind. And as we pull up the person that's less fortunate or on the bottom, then again, as a society, we all elevate as a whole, and thus go to succeeding or winning in a greater level as a nation, I would almost say, as we compete on a global stage today. So I gotta, where do you go? Mr. Brown, I love what you said, man, but I gotta push back on you, man. Respect, much respect.
That's what we're here for. It's, you know, different thoughts causes us to think more deeply. But I do want to make sure I understood what you said in the beginning. In the beginning, did you say that the college education that you're getting at Morehouse, that's not they're not getting that quality of education behind bars.
So what I mean by that is that, like at Morehouse, I get the chance to like be on campus, right, and experience a certain lifestyle. I get to, I was just at Founders Week, right, and seeing other leaders and different things, and that, you know, like, so I think there's like this whole experience that you get at like higher education or certain schools, so like maybe Ivy League, if you will, right? Like he said, you can put Morehouse on the resume. I doubt that you put Morehouse on your prison resume, right? You're probably just getting the kind of a standard diploma, like, hey, you got a bachelor's degree or something. I don't know exactly how that works, but I was trying to draw that distinction that I don't think it is the same. I know Morehouse is a premium school with a premium price tag, et cetera, where the education in the penal system doesn't have to be that grandiose. It just needs to give you the information in your mind, right, to transform you intrinsically to becoming a better person and developing certain skills and you know, and things of that nature. So I hope that better explains what I was trying to convey.
Yeah, it really does. And it's a curious, actually, it makes other questions arise in my mind. But even before I get to my other questions, and Dr. Yancey, you might want to chime in on that. But I do want to, before we leave here, pull everything together, because we're talking about brilliance behind bars. That's our project. That's our research, right? And if you look at everything we've discussed, which goes from the number of people that are in jail, the number of poor and Black people who are in jail, to the psychological part, which is which is guards or people in authority, and the way that they behave towards people who are within their sphere of power. And then to our theme of brilliance behind bars. Does anyone want to take that and pull all of that together and tell me what you get out of that? I know that's asking a lot. And I know that, you know, your mind is grasping these different pieces of information that we've thrown out there. So forgive me for that. However, I'm still going to ask, because that's where we're actually headed.
To kind of like sum it all up in a sense, you can kind of say that there's a set of like, or like an expected set of hierarchical standard for those that aren't incarcerated and those that are, and kind of like giving them the leeway, well, not leeway, I don't want to say leeway because it's like we're kind of like diminishing them, but kind of like giving them the space to try to be better, because we have seen from before that there is brilliance behind bars. I've seen with the prison debate team being able to compete with other teams just as well. And we also see that there's also social and political things that are wrong with our society as to why the incarceration system is as high as it is, from those that are in marginalized communities, from an economical standpoint and a social standpoint, and an emotional and relationship standpoint, from how you act with others and how others react to you, and your decisions based off of those actions.
Thank you for that. That's pretty comprehensive. Let me add one other thing to it. When I ask you this question of pulling it all together, tell me how you feel that affects our future. In other words, if policy were to be created right now, or we're leading to policy, how could you pull all of this together and then say, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to change my question a little bit. Let's use the word community. Let's use the word community. When you pull all of these things together and we see the effect that it has on community, if we're looking towards the future, what could you say about the things that we've pulled together and the impact that has on our community for the future? Or the potential impact?
I say the potential impact would be that we'd have more people that can better gauge their own decisions. And well, we have more people in those marginalized communities that can better gauge and look at their options as what they can do with their lives instead of going and making a bad decision that may ruin it for a long period of time. And then we can also we can kind of predict that the way that the government is set up, that we can move toward like a better, I wouldn't say a better, we can move toward a better societal like interaction between the government and the people itself, instead of kind of it's like a push and pull fight for power, like instead of I don't know, I'm not sure, but that's all I really can say.
Good enough. It's 8:01, so I just want to give one or two more people the opportunity to speak if you'd like. I asked a big question. Mr. Washington, before we leave, is there something that you'd like to say in response to my question?
Oh, no, I'm fine. You're fine, Dr. Rice.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, then let me offer this. The reason we're doing this research is because, number one, we do want to kind of ascertain what effect post-secondary education has. Studies already show that there's an effect and that those who receive the education are less likely to recidivate. If we can expand on that and understand why that occurs better than what we do right now, then perhaps we can take that learning and take it back to the community and begin to perhaps institute some policies, some informalities, some changes in our culture that may help us to redirect our communities towards better paths. I think that's part of what Brock was saying. Right now, to have a prison population constituting 32% of Black men, and if you think about the leadership of any group of people, and that men play a part in that, and that we have a large group of our men in jail, what impact is that having on our community? And if we can somehow change that, what impact will that have on our community? And so that's why your involvement in this is important. That's why your thoughts are important, because if we can create a groundswell of people thinking about this differently, and if we can impact and cause a more rehabilitative atmosphere by supporting education behind bars, then who knows what type of changes we might be able to affect in our communities. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you do your assignments, your deliverables, I hope that we've given you something to think about, something to write about, something for you to provoke other people to think about. We look forward to that. So for the next time we meet, we're meeting again in 2 more weeks on Tuesday or Wednesday. You can come to either class or both classes. And when we do that, we're going to send you questions in advance. And from now on, I'm going to ask you all to let me know that you got the email. We'll send you questions in advance, and then we're going to practice those questions when next we meet. Okay?
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you all very much.